Welcome back. Well, today we're going to look at this thumbnail. This is actually from the Vartland out of Norway, and Bjørn Markussen, he's the journalist that wrote this, and he feels that court case just went totally wrong. He feels that it's put the freedom of Jehovah's Witnesses, this big religious strong group, above the freedom of religion, the freedom of choosing your religion, and the rights of children. So we're going to look into this. This is what's interesting about this article is from the Vartland is that this news reporter is siding with the XJWs. On our side of the fence, it's not like we have Bitter Winter or Massimo or a bunch of these apologists, religion cult apologists doing our work. Our work is done by the very few that are brave enough to step forward and do it, and to publicly speak out and to do all the research that's went into the Norway case. So today's article is, well, it's actually from the Vartland. You could read it there if you have a subscription. You can only read the first paragraph there. It's word for word, and then that's the end of it. So Avoid JW, they have a subscription, obviously, because they have the whole article, and they featured Bjørn Markussen. Now, Bjørn Markussen, he's a trained educator, and remember, folks, this is a worldly guy speaking out about Jehovah's Witnesses, and a trained journalist. Now here's what he says. Bjørn Markussen is a trained educator, but throughout his professional life, he has worked mostly with journalism, marketing, and management. And for about 25 years, he was a journalist and editor in the Vartland, Varden, and Federalismvin. And he worked particularly with material on life views, and not the least with religious communities and religious practices that limit ordinary life expression. He is not and has never been a Jehovah's Witness. He is the author of a book and a booklet, out alone, available to purchase in Norway. So you can look at this book and booklet here. I'll put the link to Avoid JW on here so you guys can look at that if you wish. Now we're going to read the article. Ruling, the Court of Appeals does not doubt that the main rule of Jehovah's Witnesses requires members to avoid contact with disfellowshipping and disfellowship members. The court also understands that this is very burdensome for most children, and then they condemn the taxpayer to finance the exclusionary practice. So he's right out the gate. I like how he's speaking. He's speaking what the Court of Appeal in Norway, they understand all of the exclusion practice. They understand it all. But it's almost like they have been bullied by a large religious group that has backers, apologists. We're going to look at that. Now it says in the article, the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses can rejoice that, with the court's approval, they can still subject members, including children, to undignified trials that the court itself describes as very unpleasant and in part also humiliating, because on Friday, March 14th of this year, they won the appeal against the state. Jehovah's Witnesses will once again have tens of millions in the state subsidies to continue to do as they do. So in other words, the taxpayer is paying Jehovah's Witnesses to do what they do. Shun the hell out of ex-members, and keep doing what they do best. Instill fear into their group. Psychological fear. Now, the benefit of doubt was given to them instead of the children who were subjected to it. And this is a worldly guy. Folks, the reason this is so important, this stuff, is because now you have this journalist from the Vartland. He's speaking out, just like an ex-Jehovah's Witness. He's speaking out. And us ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, we're just telling the truth. We're telling it the way it is. Well, this guy, he understands, and he feels this is completely wrong. Now, the reason this is important, because this can still go to an appeal to the Supreme Court. So the state can bring this whole case to the Supreme Court. That is, if there's enough pressure for them to go to the Supreme Court. So stuff like this coming out in their newspaper in Norway adds pressure to Norway. Is this what Norway stands for? So let's look at how this article was really well written. I'm going to read through it and hopefully not interrupt it too much. So the article goes on, intimidating threats force members to stay. The judgment from the Borgating Court of Appeal states that it is not doubtful nor disputed that a withdrawal could have very serious concerns for a person who withdraws in terms of possibility of contact with those who are still Jehovah's Witnesses. And this also applies to close family members. This could be experienced as very difficult by many. So the Court of Appeal, therefore, does not doubt those who testified in the witness box, how traumatizing and painful this is. And the court does not doubt that brutal breakups between parents and children, grandparents and children, between close friends, that for most people will be very difficult and burdensome. And the Court of Appeal assumes, based on the evidence, that such consequences of withdrawal for some are so negative that some members choose not to withdraw for that reason. So sometimes it's just too negative, too painful to leave the Jehovah's organization. So there's a lot of people that stay in. They call them PEMO, presently in, emotionally out. Now, put another way, intimidating threats to force members to stay. That's how he puts it, this worldly guy. Intimidating threats to force members to stay. And that's what it is. Now, right, the submit done, it's easy to leave Jehovah's Witnesses. This is Markussen sarcastically summarizing the court's view. Now, he goes on to say in his article, but the court does not think that the threats of losing everything and everyone, threats specifically described in Jehovah's Witnesses' own documents, constitute sufficient undue pressure to constitute a violation of the member's right to free resignation. Dissatisfied members can simply submit a resignation, and 3 judges believe, right, submit, done, it's that easy. So what kind of threats are the legislators referring to when they write in the Section 6 of the Religious Communities Act that religious communities that make threats may be denied funding? Must a religious community make threats of physical violence or murder before the state grant is withheld? You see, this is the silly questioning. This leads to the arena of these threats. See, the courts recognize that there's threats, but the threats that Jehovah's Witnesses make, the court is saying, isn't enough of a threat, I guess, to deny funding. That's basically what they're saying, because they gave Jehovah's Witnesses the win on this one. So let's carry on. He has a picture of Risdale and his Jehovah's Witness team. This is the Jehovah's Witness guy here that's a welder or something. These are Risdale's lawyers, young lawyers. Okay, so it says no. What's the question here? The judges are in doubt. It says no. The Court of Appeal also considers psychological violence. It is beyond doubt that if a religious community has a practice that involves children being exposed to psychological violence, that this would be a violation of the children's rights under both the Convention on the Rights of a Child and the Children's Act, and could thus provide grounds for refusal and registration under Section 6, first paragraph of the Religious Communities Act. So there it is. It's really clear. Now, the judgment further describes the intimately scrutinizing processes Jehovah's Witnesses use when dealing with members who have done something wrong. For minor children in particularly, it must be assumed to be very unpleasant, the court writes. Partly humiliating, the judgment says. So yes, this has made such a strong impression on the judges that they had doubts. So, folks, could you imagine if you're in the legal business, you're working in the courts in Norway, you're reading this in the front page of the Vartland News, and you're reading this section. Perhaps you're the first court that didn't allow Jehovah's Witnesses to win. And then the second court has to read this and say, holy shit, maybe we made a mistake. Well, hopefully the legal people for the state take this up to the Supreme Court and it gets handled. Okay, well, let's carry on. What did they do then? Then they left the doubt benefit the large, resourceful international movement at all the expense of some children. So they left it to benefit this large international movement, Jehovah's Witnesses. That's how they left the doubt, at the expense of some children out of that organization. And because the Court of Appeal believes, nevertheless, under doubt, that the process as such cannot be considered psychological violence, under doubt. Okay, well, let's go further on this. That's almost how the court consoles itself. They point to this reading here, this ruling. I pulled this ruling up. I couldn't read it. So thankfully, Avoid JW did. And it says, normally, psychological violence will be a pattern of abusive acts or behaviors that is repeated or persists over time. It says, emphasis mine. Okay. So the abusive process that disobedient children are subjected to will normally last over a relatively short period of time until possible exclusion, the judge writes. You see, they think that there's going to be a little bit of uncomfortability just during the elders meeting, and that's it. And then once you're excluded, it's it. But that's not how it is. It's ongoing. You're humiliated. You're ongoing. It doesn't change the day you leave that organization or the day you decide you leave and you get humiliated is the day that it all starts. It doesn't go away. So yes, you read that right. The humiliation in Jehovah's Witnesses Judicial Committee simply do not last long enough to qualify for the term psychological violence. So he goes on to say the exclusionary practice is too effective. That the result of the process, ostracism, the deep and life-threatening loneliness, the trauma, the shame, the grief, it persists over time. Yes, this psychological violence persists for life. And this escaped, he says, the Borgating Court of Appeal. So this is the part that the judges missed. They just thought the way it was presented, that you just get disfellowship, disassociated, and the rest is okay. You can still have normal family relations. It's just spiritual relations you can't have. So this is what the courts are made to believe by lying Jehovah's Witnesses. They're not going to tell the truth. They're going to twist it to suit their needs so they can win court cases. So this is good. This is a worldly guy showing in the Vartland that, look, you guys missed something. This will hopefully get the state talking about going to a Supreme, taking this to the Supreme Court, taking another stab at this, and approaching it from a different angle and getting more clarification on all of these terms. So here we carry on. He says a misunderstanding has crept in that the Norwegian state and the previous legal proceedings have threatened the religious freedoms of Jehovah's Witnesses and their right to practice their religion. You see, this is a misunderstanding. And this is what Jehovah's Witnesses propagate. And all their apologists propagate the same thing. They make them look like Russia, and that's wrong. He says here, this is wrong. The state has simply not wanted to pay for the activity and all that it entails. So the state just doesn't want to give these guys the money for doing this psychological violence. You can go be a Jehovah's Witness. You can go do what you want. They get married. They have dues in their kingdom halls. They just got to go to the courthouse and get married. They do that in lots of lands. He goes on to say now, however, in the Court of the Appeal, a powerful group is being protected. So this Jehovah's Witnesses powerful group is being protected, despite the fact that they are hindering individuals' freedom of religion. They're hindering that. You can't leave that religion and choose another religion at your own will without punishment. You can't. And the court is putting the freedom of Jehovah's Witnesses above the freedom of the religion and the rights of children. And folks, that's what there's where we got our thumbnail from. Just show you that. Our thumbnail here. Norway puts the freedom of Jehovah's Witnesses above the freedom of religion and the rights of children. So that's what's happening. That's a strong statement to the country of Norway, to their court system. And he goes, that's how wrong it went this time. That's how wrong it went. And this Helsinki Committee, he says, who is standing up for those year after year have been subjected to what the Court of Appeal describes as humiliating and very difficult and burdensome on the part of Jehovah's Witnesses. In a public debate, former members stand by sadly alone. It must be difficult. Why are other religious communities so silent? Why are they so silent? Well, he says, perhaps a group of defectors took it as encouragement when the Norwegian Helsinki Committee invited them to a meeting on March 6th of this year. The important committee wanted to listen, and those who work to ensure that human rights are respected and translated into practical action wanted to gain insight. So maybe. And it is then unfortunately painful and tragic comic that the Helsinki Committee itself, 7 weeks before they gained this insight, sent the Court of Appeal a report with unreserved support for Jehovah's Witnesses. Isn't that something? So the Helsinki Committee met with the XJWs. You would think that this is a group. Now I just looked them up a little bit. Who are they? They're a committee for human rights. They're volunteers, non-profit in many European countries dedicated to promoting human rights, often inspired by Helsinki Accords. And you can even look on the Wikipedia. They have a little write-up on them. They were first founded in Moscow in May of 1976. So it looks like they're all over Europe, and this is who they are. But it turns out that they're more of a cult apologist, because here they took the side of Jehovah's Witnesses. Why? You see, I often wonder, are they paid out? Jehovah's Witnesses have a lot of money, and maybe they make some huge-ass donation to the Helsinki Committee, because the Helsinki Committee is all about donations, right? All these committees are about getting money. So the judgment also indicates that the Borgheden Court of Appeal read the Helsinki Committee's report well. So they went through it well, and the Helsinki Committee had been offered to provide simultaneous response to Markussen's article. So this article here, they asked the Helsinki Committee if you could provide a response, but just like Jehovah's Witnesses, they declined, because they know that they are supporting a cult. They're breaking human rights. But you know what? The money is too great. These guys know it. They won't comment. It's all about the money. And we know that and he knows that these big religions, Jehovah's Witnesses here we're talking about, they pay people off to write articles. Massimo is another one. He's head of the Vampire Association, but yet they have him. He's a cult apologist working for Jehovah's Witnesses, among others we've seen. So this is interesting, folks. We're going to keep following through on it, on what's happening in Norway, because it's not over yet. And this stuff starts coming out in the Vartland and the news. It's going to make the courts wonder, did we make a mistake here? And for all of us on the outside, yes, it's plain. It's a plain, clear mistake. Your taxpayers are funding a cult that harms children, psychological violence. On all of its members, they use psychological violence. And that's a fact. We all know it. We all feel it. All of us that are on this side of the fence. What kind of relationships do we have? Can we have normal relationships? No. Those are out and outright lies that are told in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court of Canada, Supreme Courts all over the place. So folks, that brings an end to our video today. Keep living your life with love. It doesn't include lying. It includes standing up for the truth. We stand up for the truth, we advocate it, and we help others to not get stuck in this Jehovah's Witness cult. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.